Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show this Monday, November 16th, 2020. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, where you will find everything, and I mean everything you need to get you through this winter, including not just rock salt, and they're Long Island's largest rock salt provider, but mag, ice melting pellets and flakes, Petalo premium snow and ice melter, biomelt, geomelt, spreaders, shovels, snow blowers, and everything you need for when those winter storms arrive. And they will arrive at some point, make no mistake. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue, West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125, or go to the website omnitruevalue.com. And before the winter storms arrive, we had to get rid of all that severe weather from yesterday. I have to tell you that that was quite a roll of thunderstorms that moved on through. That line was so impressive last night. I think it was the best looking squall line that we saw all anytime in the last five months.
Indeed, absolutely. And the funny thing is that initially it started off as just an area of general thunderstorms. Then they went to marginal risk for severe weather. Then they put us in the slight risk for severe.
Which
Even
we
then,
predicted,
though,
by the way, we predicted that on you predicted that on the Sunday morning show. And of
right.
course, just as soon as we went off the air, I got a message from Timothy Veltman said they just upgraded it to slight risk. I said, of course they did. They watched the show.
And the thing is, they kept mentioning about how the lack of any significant cape, only 200 at most, and even though that there was a strong amount of forcing, they really didn't think that they would lead to any kind of tornadic activity. What? Excuse me? Tornado warning? Oh my goodness!
And right near my
So
not
we
right
ran
near.
we ran the gamut from nothing to maybe a rumble or two of thunder to maybe some possible severe weather to all out tornado warnings in some
Yeah,
places. I don't know where you were.
I don't think anything was confirmed, but I did see reports from friends of mine in the neighborhood of gazebos that disappeared and a few other things that weren't there that were there before the storms arrived. But that was just I was actually I was quite impressed by the squall line, and not one but two severe thunderstorm watches that we got out of it too.
It
So
was amazing.
it was amazing. And now, of course, we go into hibernation weather-wise because there really doesn't seem too much happening across the eastern part of the United States anyway for the rest of this week, other than some temperature changes. But we do have, and this is also impressive, is Category 5 Hurricane Iota or Iota, as you pointed out yesterday. And I got a Central America satellite loop here from the GOES, and that buzzsaw is going to make landfall tonight, almost at near the same spot that Eta made landfall as a Category 4 just 2 weeks ago.
And keep in mind, check out the calendar, Joe. It's mid-November. I don't remember a Category 5 storm in the Atlantic Basin in November. This may be a first. I may be wrong, but I do not.
Uh, hmm. I'm wondering, when was Mitch in October?
I think Mitch was an October storm. I think.
Well, if you're going to have a Category 5 this time of year, you're going to have it in the Southwest Caribbean. That is probably one of the few places left where water temperatures are warm enough, maybe even in the Northwest Caribbean under the right conditions. But uh, this is, I find it astounding that we've had the two strongest storms of the sea, pretty much the two strongest storms of this hurricane season seem to have come in the month of November, particularly with this one, with the Category 5. I know a lot of the storm chasers and the hurricane hunters were, I'm sorry, the storm chasers and the hurricane lovers, the folks that are, really go crazy over this stuff, were lamenting over the fact that during the regular season, And I'm not trying, I understand. Believe me, when Louisiana got hit with was it 5 storms this year, making landfall, I'm just pointing out that there are people that, well, weather folks that get into this sort of stuff, and so they were talking about how there was an absolute lack of major hurricanes with all the activity we had with all the named storms, and here we are in November, that we're dealing with this. I mean, it is just crazy.
It is crazy. And I'm as you're speaking, I'm looking up on Google at least, looking up
Well,
Hurricane
Mike
Mitch.
Leona, my former producer and very good friend, I heart him so. He says it's not the first Category 5. If I'm reading, if that's the context of his of what what he posted on the chat board, and I'm just double checking to see if there's a follow up on that.
Now, Mitch formed on October 22nd. It dissipated on November the 9th. It was extratropical after November the 5th. It had highest winds was 180 miles per hour. So the question is, did that 180 occur before Halloween or right after Halloween as we just moved into the new month of November? Um,
Well, we'll have to pull up the year and the map and take a look at the dates and do a little archive research, unless someone on the board, Michael, can put up that statistic of the whatever Category 5 hurricane we had in the month of November. That would be most helpful, and then he could be producing just like he used to do.
I'm just looking here at and Mitch, by the way, was a storm that occurred in 1998. So that's a good long time ago. It's 22 years ago, but I still remember it, because it really did a number again on the Central American region. And as you pointed out, Joe, Southwest Caribbean, probably one of the last places that would have warm enough water this late in the season to support a Cat 5.
Make no mistake, by the way, this is potentially going to be catastrophic for that area. The Ada going in, and then they had days and days of heavy rain out of that. So that was bad enough, and now you're going to throw into Category 5 2 weeks later on virtually the same spot for landfall. I mean, what are the odds of that happening?
No, well, the same odds as what we had earlier in the season when we had not one but two hurricanes heading toward the Gulf Coast at virtually the same time.
Right, exactly.
That kind of a year.
It's been that type of year. There's a reconnaissance aircraft there at the moment checking it out. So they're finding a pressure. There was a 919 pressure, then they measured a 920 pressure, probably about a half hour or 45 minutes later. And just looking at the wind barbs here, they're in the range of 113 to 137 knots. So they're still getting absolutely clobbered with the big winds. So it's probably every bit of 155, 160 on the maximum sustained wind, and it is also getting very close to land now, so it's less than 60 miles away. The one thing that might slightly take the edge off here is that it is moving very slowly. If this were moving at 15 or 20 miles an hour, then it'd be really probably seriously problematic because you certainly would take this thing inland near its low pressure. But if it's crawling, and it's a very small consolation. If it winds up weakening slightly before landfall, it's still going to come in as a strong Category 4. And I've got the actual aircraft observations on the plot. So the pressure looks like it was down on the first measure on the first pass. Uh, the plot said 919, so that kind of looks like where we are on this graph. And on the second plot, it looks like it's maybe a little higher, maybe about 920 or 921. Top winds 125 knots at flight levels, somewhere around 115 knots, 115 knot winds measured at the 10-meter wind near the center. So that doesn't mean that there aren't stronger winds north and east of the center or east of the center. So I'm imagining they're going to carry either 155 or 160 on the latest advisory. And in fact, at 7 a.m. this morning, they were carrying 155. On the new advisory, they are still carrying 160. This is the 7 o'clock advisory, 13.683.0, moving west at 9. And yeah, top winds at 160. It's just about on land here, so making landfall right along the coast of Nicaragua. And unlike Eta, this moves west and keeps going. So it does actually. They still have it, Joe. 1 a.m. Wednesday, moving into El Salvador, the western part of El Salvador, near the border of right along the border of Honduras, as a tropical storm. So I'm wondering whether the next, if keeps on going at that same rate, it's going to be back out into the Pacific. Uh, the Pacific this time of year is a little tough to warm things to develop tropical systems, but you know what? It's 2020. Why not? I mean, who knows what it does when it gets out there? But
Interestingly, the thing that's different that Mitch actually ended up sweeping toward the southeastern United States and eventually finished off up near Europe, made that big swerving curve. This will not happen with Iota, and in fact, Joe, I find it interesting that they stop the Hurricane Center stops forecasting where the storm goes after Wednesday. It's just I know it has to be some sort of an extratropical system
well,
or something that will move into the Pacific Ocean.
well,
But
hang on. Let's see if they might have mentioned it on their the Pacific Outlook. Let's see if they did. Uh, yeah, actually, no, they didn't. They have something out way, much further out to the west, near 110 west, forecasting that it could become a short-lived tropical depression at about 15 north and about 110 west. But they make no mention here. That's the 2 day, and yeah, on the 5 day, they don't have it on the map yet. So I guess. And has this been updated for 8 o'clock? I Let me just take a look and make sure. Uh, Hang on. Sometimes they update this stuff early. Let's see.
although at this point, it's almost
Yeah,
like
they've already updated this. So, uh, 7 1 days. A new area of low pressure could form in a couple of days over the central or southwestern Caribbean Sea. Environmental conditions are conducive for some development. A 40% chance. Doesn't stop, does it? I certainly. Here it is. I got it. I've been on the map. They do have the orange area here, so that's they are looking at that. And we've been saying over the last many days that it's not out of the question that we still have the way the season's going. You can't rule out the possibility that there might be another tropical storm, another named storm, or maybe two named storms. There's still plenty of time. If it's a year like 2005 was, I mean that carried on right past Christmas when you had the last storm form right before New Year's. So who's to say you can't have another couple of named storms between now and the end of the year?
no, I think it's good. We're still going to be going. And the other thing that is a key, I think, to the fact that we're seeing storms this late in the season is the fact that the La Nina, Joe, from what I saw a little while ago in some sort of discussion, La Nina is now revved up. It is now being considered to be moderate to strong. This may be one of the stronger La Ninas in recent years. And with all of that cool Pacific water off of South America, you'd have to figure that perhaps the way that the Earth, Mother Earth, is getting rid of all of that excess heat, saying, "No, I'm not going to try in the let's try the Atlantic." The Atlantic is still warm enough for me to let off my final bit of heat and steam, so to speak.
Well, I just put up the Pacific sea surface temperature anomalies, and clearly this is a strong. I mean, this is a strong look in La Nina. You've got below normal ocean water temperatures off the entire west coast off South America, except right near the shelf as you go up toward the equator. But it's all below normal there, all across the tropical and equatorial Pacific, past the international date line, and pointing a finger toward Indonesia. So it's and the rest of the Pacific is on fire, particularly the northern half of the Pacific, where we have some rather strong anomalies of 3 or more degrees above normal, and with the exception of a small pocket of below normal temperatures south of Greenland and west of Ireland, the entire Atlantic is showing much above normal temperatures, particularly, Joe, from Virginia northeast to Newfoundland. That whole area that's near us, showing much above normal water temperatures. That's been the case for quite a while.
It has, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen so much more in terms of tropical storm activity or tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic as compared to the Pacific. I think that La Nina really is putting the kibosh on very much activity. And again, if the Earth wants to get rid of the last of its surplus heat that it built up over the tropics this season, more likely it's going to do it in the Atlantic and not so much so the Pacific.
Now, Michael points out, by the way, Joe, that in 1932 there was the 1932 Cuba hurricane was a Category 5 in the month of November.
Now that's just based upon the observations that were made in 32, trying to fit the parameter or criteria of the Saffir-Simpson scale, which did not exist
Right.
back in 32. But the assumption is, okay, that could have
Well, if
been
the Hurricane Center says that, if they have it down in their records as a Cat 5, we can't really argue the point.
no, I'm not going to argue that. No, of
No,
course not.
no, 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 no,
Did
no.
that happen? But when I said initially, I said, I don't remember a Category 5 in November or something like anything
Right.
remotely like this. At least in my lifetime, I was not around in 1932, and neither were you,
No.
by the way.
Well, okay. I'm glad that that's the case.
Yes.
Yes, we're slightly we don't go quite that far back. We go back to the end of the Eisenhower administration.
I vaguely remember growing up as a very young boy watching on our Philco TV and seeing President Eisenhower because he was the president. He was the man with the bald head. In fact, I
Right, but
even
I was born in '59, so that was toward
I,
the end. I don't
I,
have memories that far back.
I remember mentioning it to my mom. I said, "Is that Mr. Clean?" Which which in some ways people still think of President Eisenhower as Mr. Clean's. In fact, people even after his term as president finished, I know I remember listening on YouTube. They had like phone conversations between President Kennedy and President Eisenhower, and you'd say to the former president, Mr. President, but President Kennedy called him General. He said, "Well, General." Still, people still thought of him as more of the general than the
The
president.
general,
The general,
the general. You are nothing but a private,
yes.
a lowly private. Oh God! All right, so I got the U.S. satellite view up. There really isn't a whole lot happening in the U.S. today. It's just we're in one of those modes, I guess, when you get a day like yesterday with the severe weather we had, and now the atmosphere has pretty much released all its pain, and we've got fairly quiet conditions. The exception is up in the Pacific Northwest, where we do have moisture coming in there. And I just want to bring up, let's see, I didn't really get a chance to check out any kind of watches and warnings that are up. My suspicion is that there's probably not that many. Out in the West, we do have some high wind warnings up for and wind advisories for southern Oregon and parts of western California into Nevada in the mountains, and winter storm warnings up in the Sierra Nevadas in California. And other than that, it really is quiet across the rest of the United States. There's also, looks like those must be storm warnings that are up. Yeah, storm warnings up for the coast of Oregon and southern Washington for an offshore Pacific storm that'll be moving eastward. And actually, you see it here on the Canadian satellite view. The storm that is off the coast, well to the west at the moment of Oregon and Washington, but it's fairly well defined here as it moves eastward, and that'll be crashing in over the next couple of days. And in the meantime, you see yesterday's storm moving up now up into northern Labrador with the trailing cold front that runs from Newfoundland out into the Atlantic. That was our powerhouse that went through yesterday evening, and in the meantime, we just sit rather quietly. High pressure is not quite on the scene yet. Give the chance for this map to load and update. We actually have another cold front coming through tomorrow, but that really isn't going to be doing very much. It might be. I threw in the chance that there could be a rain, or maybe in inland areas in upstate New York. There's probably going to be a little bit of snow shower activity, a little bit of lake effect going on. But other than that, it should be a non-event here as it goes by, and then we'll get into some rather cold air, I think, for Tuesday night, lasting into Thursday morning.
I think actually, Joe, that the even though the five boroughs had I think a freeze warning posted a week or two ago, we never saw temperatures at Central Park drop below 32 or even hit 32.
I thought they
Uh,
got to 32.
they did get to 32,
I
or
thought they did. I thought they did get to 32. Maybe not.
well,
Well, the point is that they will get to 32 this time.
well, tomorrow night I think they're going to get to 30, and I think by the time we get to Wednesday night the temperature could actually drop. I think in the city proper
Yeah,
into the
I think upper
into the upper
20s.
20s.
Yeah.
And we're looking at, if that happens, if it gets down to, let's say, 29 in Central Park, that's going to be the coldest temperature that Central Park has had, going all the way back to the 1st of March of this year.
It's been that
So
long.
it's been 7.5 months. Yeah, I actually thought we were colder or had cold temperatures in April, and even when we had the snow in May, I thought we were right around freezing. No, it actually has been that long. I think on March the 1st this year, the temperature at Central Park was 25. So this will be the first time since then that we'll perhaps see temperatures Wednesday night, Thursday morning in the 20s in New York City. So coldest temperatures in about 7.5 months coming our way for the middle of this week.
The shortwave trough that's going to be coming through here tomorrow, you can see it on the satellite on the radar. There's an area of light precipitation moving across Lake Michigan into uh, western, the lower peninsula of Michigan and northern Indiana. And that really is about it as far as precip is concerned. Some showers showing up off the south coast of Florida, moving northeast to southwest. And up in the Pacific Northwest, in northwesternmost Washington, there's an area of heavy rain that is moving northeastward into southern Vancouver Island and moving northeast from there. Also seeing some precip up in northern Idaho, and that really is about it. The radar is about as quiet as it can be for this time of year. And checking out the snowfall probabilities here from WPC, they do have. I went for I put the 2 inch greater than 2 inches. They have a rather high probability of that in a small area in northwest PA, southwestern New York, and then a small area in central New York where there's about a 50% chance of at least a couple. And this is over the next 72 hours, by the way. And then going out into the west, where that's the one place where it is somewhat bullish for some snow. You're seeing some areas again in the mountains where we're talking about. I'll move it up to 4 out here. Uh, it's by the standards of the West Coast, it's fairly minimal. You've got a few pockets where there's a high probability of at least 4. It's got to be elevation driven. You see how it runs up and down from California on up into western Washington state. And that really is about it. And as far as storms are concerned, we're not going to see too much happening here, Joe. I just was looking at the rest of the week and going into the weekend. Outside, the most exciting thing that's going to happen here in the east really is probably some high clouds that might show up when warmer air starts to arrive here, maybe later on Thursday, and then for sure for Friday and into the weekend, because we are going to warm up again uh, this weekend, I think. The only thing that might get in the way is if we, this looks like this is the fact that I'm looking at something and thinking there's a little backdoor cold front that's dropping down from upstate New York Friday night into early Saturday that stalls overhead. That's about as exciting as it gets. Really.
I think the temperatures here this weekend, at least in the Hudson Valley where I am, temperatures are going to be once again by this weekend 10 to 12 degrees above normal, Joe. Now
Yeah.
we're not talking about 70s anymore, but we are talking about. And you know what? Even though I'm saying, for Saturday and Sunday locally, temperatures will be in the low 60s. I mean, what did we see about a week or so ago? We were going for that, basically the same story in our area, and then all of a sudden it went to mid 60s and upper 60s. What do we end
Right.
up? What did we?
But we did have a west wind for the better part of 5 days. I don't think we're going to have that this time around.
I think it'll be more southwest, not
Yeah,
west.
well, again, there's this little backdoor thing that on Friday night, Saturday, where the wind actually the isobars. There's two isobars with from the east with a high that's in near Bangor, Maine. There is going to be a low that with what the energy that's coming into the Pacific from the Pacific and into the Northwest. You can see it here. That eventually does translate eastward into the Rockies. There's a little low that develops late this week and on Saturday that produces a little bit of snow there in parts of Colorado, Wyoming, and but it's not even cold enough for all snow when you move up into Nebraska and Minnesota. There's some rain in the mix. That low goes up into Canada, and there's our next cold front that comes through here next Monday with maybe a couple of showers. And Joe, the other thing is off the southeast coast, there is a bit of a wave, some sort of inverted trough that moves westward. That the GFS has been occasionally firing it up into something. You can sort of see it here on the surface with the kinked isobars off the Florida coast next Sunday, that winds up just getting picked up and drawn out to the east. But you know what? Since if that winds up spinning into a tropical depression, don't be shocked.
Well, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm shocked. I'm already shell shocked by a Category 5 storm in November. So why
Right.
would I be shocked if there was a measly tropical depression forming off the coast of Florida or somewhere north of the Bahamas?
Now there are a couple of things in the long range because I've been noticing lately in the last especially in the last several days for whatever reason. Maybe because the politics have dropped down, so I'm getting fewer political posts and more weather posts are being distributed by Facebook. I don't know if that's the case, but uh, there's been an absolute piling on. I mean, unrelenting piling on of people in the weather world. Some professional, some not. Uh, I welcome anyone's opinion, but this piling on of the fact that this is going to be a non-winter because of the La Nina. And I would just again point out that that is only one of many factors. And I want to go back to the stratosphere because I've been watching this over the last 5 days or so. And one of the interesting things that I'm noticing, if we start off right now, the polar vortex is basically wrapped up like a ball. If you notice that the extent of the darker blue is pretty much trapped up in northern Canada, covers all of the Arctic region and Siberia. So that area, that's where all the cold air is. Okay, and there's no mechanism in the atmosphere, given the way the upper pattern is set up with the ridge, what seems like a semi-permanent ridge off the southeast coast. Um, you're not going to have much luck bringing cold air down, and if there's a trough in the west, even more so. But one of the things I'm noticing, Joe, is that the vortex, and this goes back to something that our Jim Witt was talking about with the upper air, and what Larry Cosgrove was mentioning about the fact that the polar vortex in the stratosphere, when it's pinned back over Siberia, or if it goes into northwest Canada, that really doesn't do any good for weather in the Northeast. However, the GFS has been kind of insistent lately that as we get later into the forecast period, as we get toward the very end of the month and to the very beginning of December, that upper low rotates and starts to migrate out into the Arctic Ocean and pushing toward northern Greenland and the eastern side of northern Canada. Now, whether it verifies or not, I don't know. But just looking at that happening um, leads me to think that there might be something there down the road when we get into December at some point to look at. Even in the warmest patterns, you usually do get a little bit of a window of opportunity. But I'm going to keep an eye on this. I've been watching this for the last week or so, and I want to see if this trend continues as we get closer, because this is a little bit of a different look up in the stratosphere. And oftentimes, Joe, what happens up there takes about a week or two to translate down here down at the surface, assuming it does, because sometimes it doesn't. But we'll see. I mean, there's nothing much else for us to look at, so we might as well uh, look up where planes fly.
Well, I'm thinking that we're going to have near or above normal temperatures. And this is the question I was asking about a week or 10 days ago about what people would prefer. Would they prefer a cold, flat out through the entire winter, cold temperatures and on and off periods of light and occasionally moderate snowfall? Or would you like to have one big boom, one major storm that might drop 10 or 15 or even 18 inches of snow in one sitting? I honestly believe, Joe, I think we're looking at that kind of a winter coming up where it's going to be unseasonably mild for a while, and then all of a sudden we're going to flip, and into February we will have a shot at getting our one big storm for the winter season, and maybe a couple of minor ones as we move into March. But I think we're headed for that type of a winter as opposed to a winter where it's like uniformly cold and snowy on and off through the period. And that'll make and you get if you do get like a foot or more of snow in one sitting, even if we haven't had anything up until that time of significance, that'll make a lot of people still happy, or at least it'll be a brief thrill for all of you snow lovers out there. But I think that's what we're going to be heading for. We'll have to wait probably until February to get it, but we'll see how this all pans out.
I brought up the CFS climate model just to give you a perspective of temperatures, which at the moment, in the week that we are in, from today through the next 7 days, we're looking at much above normal temperatures throughout much of the Arctic region into Siberia. So whatever's going on in the stratosphere may not necessarily be translating down relative to normal in those areas. It's actually below normal over a good chunk of Canada, except for eastern Canada, and of course all of the U.S. is above normal. Asia is Central and Southern Asia is where the well below normal temperatures are, and as we move through the next 6 weeks, the above normal just pretty much stays in control over the U.S. Right through the forecast period, and the climate models go out 6 weeks. So this takes us right until the end of December. So we've already taken the whole first month of winter. It hasn't even arrived. December has it still doesn't arrive for another 15 days, and we've already wiped the entire month out for winter weather lovers.
Yeah. Well, I'm still looking. Who'll be the first person on the chat board to throw the white towel in?
Look, I'm just going to tell you that. I mean, I'm just going to say again, it's long range, and we've seen it happen before where we think we're going into one sort of pattern, and then it winds up being something else. So I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean the models are going to show whatever they're going to show. But I could think back to last year, Joe. There were several times where the climate models were showing it turning cold and going below normal for a relatively long stretch, and it just never happened. So there's nothing that says that the errors can't be the same here in the other direction. I don't know. I just think there's just too much variability in the long range to put a whole lot of faith in it, and it's not fun. What is the fun of convincing yourself now that there isn't going to be any snow of consequence? What good does that do you? You have to go through the whole 3 months of winter anyhow. You might as well have a little bit of hope.
Well, yesterday was the 2 year anniversary of our mid-November surprise of 2018. Last year we had a humongous snow for upstate New York. I know Tim Veltman remembers 22 inches of snow December 1st and 2nd, and parts of the Hudson Valley picked up over a foot. Who maybe say if you're going to 15-day increments, maybe we'll have a surprise on December 15th of this year. Although it doesn't look like it, because I've been looking at the Climate Prediction Center forecasts, and they've been just saying warm, 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 warm. They had 70% chance or 70% probability of above normal temperatures in the central part of the country
Right.
up until the 11th of December. I mean, that's, when they stick their necks out that far, 3 to 4 weeks in advance with a 70% probability, they must be pretty confident that it's going to be warm.
Fled Weather says, do I think that the so-called climate models have a warm bias? I don't know if they have a warm bias or not, but they do have a persistence bias. In other words, they certainly play the game of the trend is your friend. So if we're in one of these stretches where the pattern looks like it's locked in and warm, it's going to keep showing that until it doesn't. So that's another thing to bear in mind. A lot of time, there's a lot of persistence that is built into some of these models. As I said, the trend is being your friend. So um, just remember when you're looking at it and you're seeing above normal temperatures as far as the eye can see. Bill Rogers wants to know, Joe, if you are going to issue a long range forecast for the winter for Vermont.
For Vermont.
Yes, where there are no where there are Stewarts but no billboards.
That's a funny thing. For a number of years, when I was working a private weather service, I used to do the weather for the Vermont Department of Transportation. I forget the gentleman's name, but he always took. It didn't matter if it was going to be 3 feet of snow coming. He'd say, "Well, that's Vermont weather." I would think that whatever I just said for the tri-state area probably would hold true for Vermont as well. Milder than normal temperatures, and I think February is going to be the month. If we do have a month for snow, then February will be the month, and we'll just play it by ear and see how it all pans out.
Adam Lowe says it will snow this winter, but many storms will be slop storms, snow to rain. Okay, well, that's even in the best of winters sometimes with the best of weather patterns. A lot of them are that way. I look, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
You know
Um,
what, Joe? I just realized we're never going to see any big snowstorms in the New York tri-state metropolitan area for as long as you and I live. You want to know why?
why?
Because we don't work for a television station
Right?
anymore.
Exactly.
We don't have to.
Exactly.
We don't have to commute. We don't have to.
Right,
When
so
the
let's
phone,
arrange for us to we have to arrange for us to commute somewhere on a
right?
regular basis.
You remember those days? You'd get a big snowstorm, would be right smack in the middle, and the phone would ring, and it's like, "We need you. Come on in." You know, that's people think it's a lot of fun being a TV, personality or whatever like that. Not in situations like that. And believe me, Joe and I together, we put up with enough of that. So now, Joe, that we don't have to deal with that anymore, and we don't have to worry about that. That's why we're not going to see any big snowstorms for the rest of our life.
Right. Jimmy 132 says uh, I depend on the snow to pay my bills. I'm a landscaper and a snow removal guy. I listen. I hear you, Jimmy. I got a lot of guys that I work with during the winter months that are snow removal is their business. So they're not happy when it doesn't snow, particularly if they bought a ton of snow melt and they don't get to use it. So they want some snowstorms out there so that they could make their money during the winter time. So I totally get it. Believe
But
me.
we'll make sure that they'll be able to use, maybe in February, they'll be able to use some of that good old fashioned rock salt that you can only get at Omni.
Omni True Value Hardware. That's right. At 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. We're not finishing the show yet because I actually have a rant, a short rant. Maybe it'll
Oh,
turn into a
okay.
long one. Uh, Joe? I am a firm believer in the law of unintended consequences. Are you a believer in the law of unintended consequences?
I only
In
know
other words,
truth.
you do something, you do something that you expect a certain outcome, and it's a good outcome, but you don't take into account that it maybe creates a problem someplace else.
I'm not. No, you'll have to
Well,
go.
I mean, it happens in the real world all the time. They pass a law that's supposed to accomplish one thing, and it creates a problem for something else.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's the law of unintended consequences.
right.
You kind of, you go out there, you try to do something good, and something negative comes out of it because and you didn't realize that was a potential. Well, one
no
of
good
the
turn goes unpunished.
right, exactly. No good
Right.
deed goes unpunished. So,
Okay.
along those lines, I have been thinking for weeks that one of the big upsides about the environment that we have been in for the last uh, 7 or 8 months between the pandemic and the lockdown, no lockdown, that kind of thing. And of course, all the drama surrounding the election. One of the things that I've noticed is that some of the folks who comment on our YouTube videos, they don't necessarily watch the show, or maybe they do watch the show, but then they comment on the YouTube videos. The geoengineering folks, you know the ones. Well, they disappeared completely for the last 6 or 7 months over this because they were just kind of onto all sorts of other conspiracy theories. Well, now that the election has come and gone, guess what? They started reappearing again. And I'm just going to say, and I'm going to say this really nicely. I left a couple of responses to a few folks about it, but maybe the responses were not quite, there was a little sarcasm in those responses. I will just say, look, we're just not interested. So if you think you're giving us information that you only have, um, we don't really want to hear it. On the other hand, we could just publicly admit that Joe and I are on the payroll, and we get checks every month from the secret people with the dark sunglasses in the federal government on a regular basis to deny all this stuff. So you could think either way. Um, if you want to take it positive, you could just take my message about we're not interested, um, and go from there, or you can wrap it up that that Joe and I are part of this vast conspiracy, and we're paid money by the secret people, the secret organizations and government and around the country. We're on everybody's payroll. Okay, that's why we wear really classy hoodies and sweaters, because we're getting checks on a regular basis. All right.
Well, if you think I'm not a snow lover, I mean, look at this. What could be more wintry than a shirt like this, Joe?
Oh, that's
Take a look.
classy.
That's winter, and maybe it'll help in the coming day. Well, I mean, I just put it on today, and what happened? Next couple of days is going to get really cold, so I'll put this on whenever you folks want cold and snow. Ask me to put on my magic shirt with the big. Is that
Right.
a deer or an elk? I'm not even sure anymore.
Now,
And
um, now you can't find the questions for tonight, correct?
I got the questions.
Oh, you got them. Oh, so
I
we
got
are going to have Briller Jeopardy tonight. The chairman has sent his questions, and I'm sitting in the. If I say the secret void, I win $100.
it is a Thanksgiving theme. I know Thanksgiving is not this week, but next week. But Scott wanted to get Briller Jeopardy a Thanksgiving style theme a bit early this year.
Okay,
So the category is Thanksgiving in Central Park. Are you
okay,
ready for question one? There are four questions here.
okay. Go ahead, shoot.
Question number one: what was the biggest snowfall on Thanksgiving at Central Park?
Okay, so wasn't it that snowstorm that you talk about with your grandfather? Was it 1938 or something?
Oh, that kind of falls a little short of that. I'll give you a hint. You and I have lived through the biggest snowfall on Thanksgiving.
Well, was it not the 1989 one?
This is according to Mr. Briller.
Okay, so maybe that was the one. Yeah, I had 8 inches out of that on Long Island. So, and then
Right.
I got down to 11 degrees on for the Friday morning, and by afternoon it was in the
Yeah.
mid 50s.
And you want to know something? You know how I remember that? Because guess who was filling in for you at News 12 Long Island?
You were.
Yes.
Yes. Well,
And
I
guess
was
what?
stuck at home. Look, that was at least one storm I didn't have to drive. Well, I sort of did have to drive in because we had no food for Thanksgiving. We were supposed to go to see relatives, um, but as it turned out, so I had to find an open supermarket, um, and so I actually had to go out and drive. But that was just a relatively short distance, and most people were off the roads anyhow.
Well, the official amount at Central Park, according to the chairman, 4.4 inches, 1989. And yes, I worked for you the following morning at News 12 Long Island. And guess who my anchor was that morning? My news the news anchor was.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Lee and it wasn't Carol. It was somebody else. I'll give you a hint.
It wasn't Moskowitz.
No, it was
Uh,
no, Joe
what
Moskowitz was not doing the news that morning.
was it? Was it Patty Ann Brown?
No, she was at she now is at Spectrum New York One.
Oh, Romatori.
Roma Torrey.
Romatori. God bless her. Well,
So
we wish her well.
Roma Torrey and Joe Rayo frozen on the morning after Thanksgiving, 1989. All right, question number 2. What was the warmest Thanksgiving day at Central Park?
Did I live in this Thanksgiving
Oh,
Day?
not, and neither did I.
So then it was like a million years ago. So it was prior to the Category 5 hurricane in Cuba in
Yes,
1932.
it was.
All right. I don't know. I have no idea. Uh, I'll just take a guess and I'll say 1905.
1920, 72 room temperature, 72 degrees.
Okay, that was
Yeah,
actually lower than it was on Christmas Eve that year. Um, whatever it was,
yeah.
2016, 2015,
2015 or
December of 15. All right, go ahead. What's the next one?
question 3. What was the coldest morning low on Thanksgiving?
The coldest morning low?
Yes. I'll tell you what,
That was in our lifetime, I think,
this
right?
goes this goes way,
Way
way,
back?
way back.
All right, then I'll guess maybe it was like in 1887,
Um, even way further back than that.
1869,
Not quite that far back.
during the Ulysses S. Grant administration.
You know what we should do? We should play this like the clock game on
Oh,
prices
higher, lower,
higher.
higher, lower. And then we had the
1871. 15
1871.
Central Park on Thanksgiving morning.
Okay.
Were we celebrating Thanksgiving? Yeah, I guess we were.
Yeah.
1871.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It was that goes so far back, by the way, that rainbows were in black and white at that time.
Was it, yes? Was there that was 3 questions, right? Was
No,
there enough? You said
question. Well, wait a minute. It was 15 in 1871, and then he actually gives a second place, not tied with 15, but a couple of degrees warmer, 17. Coldest morning low on Thanksgiving. What year was that?
wasn't that didn't we have a cold Thanksgiving morning recently, relatively
Yeah,
recently?
relatively recently, Joe. Yes,
Like 20, I don't know, 2013,
2018.
2018. Okay.
Yes. And finally, question 4. What was the warmest Thanksgiving since 2000?
I don't know. I have no idea.
2007, 66 degrees.
Okay.
So there you go.
So on the chat board, United Heretic Rising Generals Constitutional Keys, um, in response to what I uh, was ranting about with regards to, um, the weather manipulators, not trying to stir the pot, he says, I'm just asking that we consider all the variables in the equation that make weather, not looking for an argument. Okay, I appreciate that. So I'm just going to just tell you that, Joe and I, all we do is we look at we look at our meteorology, we look at our weather maps, and we look at our weather models, and that's what we do. We don't deal with other things that are, I would not consider science. Okay, so it's not part of the weather equation that goes into how we make our forecasts. So we just kind of leave it at that. We do weather on this channel. We don't really do other things like that. There are channels that do that sort of stuff, and that's fine. Everybody can do whatever they want. That's what the internet is about. But that's not what we're about. So I'm trying to be nice about it. I think I'm being nice about it. That's a nice response, right, Joe? Am I
My
being? I'm being
my
nice. I don't mean any malice from what I said. It's just that that's not what we do.
No, we don't do that.
No.
Mike Clow writes, Joe and Joe are the co-leaders of the geoengineering, and their sweatshirts have special foil linings that protect them from being remotely controlled, and those sweatshirts convert into hats
Of the tin foil variety.
in foil variety.
Oh, by the way, I watched, and I'm sure you were glued to your set. So was I, because I wanted to see if they were going to run my tweet last night on the Discovery Channel. But I watched the launch of the SpaceX
That was
rocket. That was pretty cool.
that's always exciting to watch something like that, especially since those spacesuits are quite a bit different from the ones we grew up with.
Oh yeah,
They look like they were done by Sergio
I
Valente.
was going to say, yeah, they probably have a label.
But it was
Yeah, it was really exciting to watch. I hadn't honestly, it's been so many years since I even watched one of those things, except for when you would see I might see it on a news that they would run run some video of it. That's but I never really took the time to watch them go off live.
what makes it
And
unique compared to all the other missions and all the other launches that we've watched in our lifetime is that now SpaceX is actually return. I mean, the rocket that launches the capsule into space then turns around and comes back, and you can actually watch it land. That's incredible to me. That is really, and what the one that landed last night will be reused. It'll be ready for the next launch in about 6 months.
Adam Lowe says, I cannot believe every weather blogger, professional long range forecaster, and models all agree on a blowtorch winter. Adam, this is why I have been saying now for several weeks that the more everybody piles on to that side, the more I want to take the other side of that trade. So I'm not a long range forecaster. I've said many times after unsuccessful attempts, I have a very, very difficult time getting my head around it. If it's inside 2 or 3 weeks, I can figure it out. Um, Sometimes I'm close. Sometimes I'm not so close. But anything beyond that, honestly, I really just don't have a feel for it. So again, um, if everybody is on one side of the trade, I have learned in my life experience that that is a time to sort of take a step back and look around and see if they're missing something. The madness of crowds, basically, try to avoid them. Um, uh, that's I understand your sentiment. And United Heretics Rising General's Constitutional Key says, understood, Joe. There's plenty here to be admired as it is. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, I appreciate. I'm glad that you understand my position, or our position. So thank you very much, and we're happy you are here.
That's
Um,
a long name, isn't it?
yeah, that's actually kind of cool. I have to squint to see it because the chat board I have, the writing is very small. So
Same
when
here.
it's long, I have to really squint to see it. So
Do I
anyway,
use do
trying
I
to.
use analogs? Samantha Mott says, or asks, do I use analogs? I look at analogs sometimes. I think they are useful sometimes. I remember I could remember. I look at a pattern sometimes. I say, I remember this. Like for example, what we just went through last week with the abnormally warm or mild temperatures. I remember a very similar setup like that back in 1975. That's 45 years ago. But this is how my mind is weird. It's like a strange Rolodex in my head. And
Oh,
then all of a
that's
sudden,
that. Mine used to be that way, but then age has set in, and it doesn't quite function as well as it used to.
yeah,
But yeah, I used to be the same way. Uh, would remember every storm, the dates, the circumstances, but it's getting fuzzy now. Sometimes I can't even remember what the weather was like, just a few days ago.
Matt K says, want to talk about the meteor shower, Joe Rayo. I know what you're alluding to, Matt, and tonight is the night. Actually, tomorrow morning is the morning of the Leonid meteor shower, But the Leonids are overpriced, so to speak. Everybody is thinking back to the beginning of this century, back in 1999, 2000, 2001, when the comet that produced that meteor shower was close by, and we were getting um, meteors coming at the rate of hundreds or even thousands per hour. The Leonids are not like that now because the comet is nowhere to be found in our vicinity. If you want to get up tomorrow morning, if the sky is clear, stand outside. You may have to wait 10 or 15 minutes, but you'll see a very ultra swift or very rapid meteor shooting out of the constellation of Leo. You might get a handful of meteors tomorrow morning. Really, it's not worth it if you don't like chilly weather and getting up at those godforsaken hours. But next month, we have a real treat in terms of meteor showers. We have the Geminid shower on December 13th. That will produce quite a bit of meteor activity, and some of them will be very bright, and we'll get more into that as we get closer to that event. That is the shower to look forward to. But if you want to get up and look around tomorrow morning, I'm going to be watching the Inside the Eyelid show. I do not intend to get up to watch for, 2 or 3 or 5 shooting stars in the course of an hour from the Leonids, but
Yeah,
they
you're
are
not
out.
doing that.
Yeah.
Bill Rogers, I saw your comment on YouTube about when am I going to do another cooking video because you want me to show you how to make sauce, Sunday sauce. Now let me just tell you that uh, I made it a couple of weeks ago and it was so good that I had a lot of leftover sauce. And so I've been using it as basically a starter. So I've got to wait till I've got nothing left, and then uh, I can start one from scratch. So sometime in the next couple of weeks, I will. I promise. The next time I make, we called it. My house was called either salsa or ragu, because in Italian, when you make sauce that's got meat in it, it's actually called ragu, not that that abomination you buy at the supermarket. So, um, but when I do make it again, I will record it and I will put it up on YouTube. I do have a couple of cooking videos up there of stuff that I've made. Um, I think there's one with chicken thighs, one with ribs, and maybe steaks. I forget. So, but I promise I will do it. And my sauce was damn good, I have to tell you.
What do you probably remember this commercial? I don't remember the brand name. I don't know if it was Ronzoni, Butoni, but they ran this commercial about more years than you and I care to remember, where the chef is talking to the head of the company and he says, "We put this in our sauce and that in our sauce." And then he says, "We put more marinara in our marinara sauce."
Yeah,
And the
that rings a bell. I don't
and
remember what brand that was.
and the
I
and
can tell
the
you this: it was nothing I ever had in my house.
and the head of the company looks at the chef and says, "What do you mean more marinara in our marinara sauce?" And the chef goes, "Marinara."
It's
And, the,
marinara.
and he says, the president says, "Next time you tell me the good news, call me up on the phone."
Yeah, yeah. Mine has a lot of garlic in it.
Yes.
I will look. I'll leave you with this. Uh, if you're gonna make sauce, all right, um, you want to use. I go when I make my sauce. I start with some olive oil and some garlic chopped up, unless I'm really lazy, and then I'll cheat and use the granulated garlic. I know that's like a sin, but sometimes I just don't have any garlic around, or I don't feel like going to the store. But uh, in that in the pot, so you put a little oil, a little garlic on a low flame. You get the garlic going. Then you take your meats. Okay. Now I use pork spare ribs. I use short ribs, and I might make meatballs, which is a whole separate ordeal because that's a complicated recipe. But you could do it without meatballs. But get a mix of meats. Pork, short ribs are great if you can find like really thick short ribs, or if you go to Costco, they have short boneless short ribs that are like almost like steak strips. And I bought them when I saw them a couple of weeks ago. They were outstanding. I made braised short ribs with them in the stoneware that I have. So, but you could use that. Uh, so and also get a one piece of lamb, maybe a lamb shoulder chop, because that gives it a little bit of a different flavor to it, to the sauce you're making. You brown your meat in your big pot before you put any tomatoes in there. So you brown your meat in the big pot. You just want to brown both sides just to sear it, and then when you have all your meat browned, in my big pot, I buy um, 2 cans of peeled tomatoes. One of those cans is San Marzano tomatoes, which are they're imported. They're a little more expensive and they're very sweet. They're really very good. So I get the Italian brand peeled tomatoes, the big cans. I always buy four. I always try to get each can as a different brand, because sometimes you could get stuck with a lot where they're all bitter. So you don't want to have to deal with that. So if you mix the brands up, you're bound to, if you got one of those cans where the tomatoes are a little bitter, they'll be offset by the other ones, and you got the San Marzanos anyway. So you got 2 cans of peeled tomatoes, 2 cans of tomato puree. So you put that all in there, and then you bring it to a boil. Let it boil on very low flame. So slowly bring it up to a boil for about an hour and a half, and then you just let it sit there. You turn the flame off, you let it sit there for a couple of hours to just kind of absorb everything. And add a bay leaf in there. Throw in some basil if you've got it. Um, that'll you'll get a pretty good sauce out of that if you just follow those basics. But I promise I'll do that. The next time I make sauce on Sunday, I'll record it.
And watch out, Martha Stewart and the folks at Cook Country. You ever see
Well,
those shows, Cook's Country
I
or America's Test Kitchen?
that I see. America's Test Kitchen I watch from time to time.
Yeah.
Um, I love the Barefoot Contessa. I love her recipes. They're very good.
All right.
And
Very good.
you are an expert at making a ham sandwich.
I'm an expert at making a ham sandwich. Absolutely. And
Right.
boiling water too.
You and Fred Mertz. That's the only thing you know how to cook.
Rick B says, Joe R, do I listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson? Rick B, Neil deGrasse Tyson is my boss at the Hayden Planetarium. I've known Neil since the mid 90s, and he and I have an agreement. I tell people he's the world's greatest astrophysicist. And he tells people if you need to know anything about where the planets or an eclipse or the comets are going to be, you can't miss by going to Joe Rayo. So we have this mutual respect for each other. We've known each other for many, many years. And I've known Neil before he became the big star that he is.
All right. So, is he coming on the show anytime soon?
Would you like to? I don't know if he would say yes or no. I'll ask him.
Ask him.
I'll ask him. Yeah.
Ask him.
That would be. Could you imagine if we did that? If he accepted? That would be unbelievable. That Joe, if we said Neil deGrasse Tyson was going to appear on Joe and Joe, I'll bet you we would have we would have like exponential numbers suddenly of people coming online to view and being part and to ask him questions on our chat.
Oh, listen, ask him.
I will ask him.
We'll be gentle. I mean, we have to social distance anyway, so you could do it on Zoom.
That's absolutely. But he probably would come back and say something like this. Well, what do I know about weather? Actually, he does know some stuff.
We have a lot of folks. A lot of our audience loves when you talk. You talk about the astronomy stuff. So
Yep.
I'm sure there's there will be interest in that.
Yep.
All right. So we'll wrap it up for tonight.
I guess we will.
And we are going to be, of course, back at this time tomorrow night for the Joe and Joe Weather Show. And, well, why wouldn't we be? We try to come be here 5 days a week at least. And when weather is busy, we'll do a sixth. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125. They're actually just north of the Southern State Parkway, so they're very easy to find. Wellwood Avenue is a main drag. 631 756-1125, or go to the website omnitruevalue.com. So we'll see you tomorrow night, Mr. Rayo.
We'll be here. We're
Okay.
not going anywhere. I'm going to sit right in this chair and wait until tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time when we will be back on the air with Joe and Joe.
Just get Mrs. Rayo to dust you if you're going to sit in that chair for the next 24 hours.
True.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So send her my best, and we'll see you.